beg to move that this House has considered the matter of the Adoption and Special Guardianship Support Fund. It is a pleasure to serve under you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to begin by thanking the Backbench Business Committee for granting this debate and to honourable members who supported my application. The Adoption and Special Guardianship Support Fund has, since 2015, been a lifeline for families who are raising children who've endured immense hardship and trauma. I welcome the announcement this morning, nicely timed for this debate, that the fund will be continuing into the next financial year, giving families and providers a little more of a chance to plan and deliver therapy. It is also good news that the Department plans to engage with providers and families during the reform process. This shows that the campaigning of colleagues, families and providers here today and elsewhere makes a difference, and that we can't stop now. But while this extension is welcome, it does not properly address any of the fundamental issues that exist as a result of the cuts announced in April, such as the significant decrease in per-child funding or the lack of a long-term settlement for the fund. The fund was designed to provide children with the therapeutic support they need to recover from trauma, neglect and abuse. It has enabled outstanding providers like Beacon House and Jigsaw in my own constituency of Mid-Sussex to deliver life-changing therapy to vulnerable children. The fund also provides vital support to parents like Rachel, who is here today and who speaks so powerfully about the importance of the fund and the irreversible damage its withdrawal does.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and can I please put on record my thanks to her for her tireless campaigning on this specific issue on behalf of us all. Providers like Beacon House that also represent my constituency have been clear that proper assessments are essential, they're not optional extras. So does the honourable member agree with me that cutting funding for those specialist assessments means that therapy risks starting without the foundations that are needed for long-term healing, something that is both clinically unsafe and deeply unfair to those families?
I thank my honourable friend for her kind words and her intervention, and she is absolutely right, and I will address her point in due course. In fact, when I saw Rachel this morning and told her about the one-year renewal of the fund, she told me that she had come out in goosebumps as a result. That's how much this fund matters to adoptive families. I have seen for myself the difference this fund makes. One parent told me of their gratitude for the ASGSF, that it was immeasurable and that they would never have been able to be an adoptive parent today without it. They spoke about two professionals whose, and I quote, deep understanding, profound compassion and reflective empathy had supported her and her children through multiple crises and out the other side. These stories are not rare. Every year, Adoption UK's Adoption Barometer shows consistent results. 85% of families who access the fund say it makes a positive impact. 94% they would say they would use it again. So yes, it was a relief in April when the honourable member for Twickenham secured a commitment from the Minister that the fund would continue. But that relief came only after weeks of absolutely unnecessary anxiety. Families were left in limbo, providers unsure if they could keep going. But even now, huge problems and unanswered questions remain. The profound concern that I am hearing from families, from therapists and from charities working with adoptive and kinship families is whether the government is going to learn from the shambles of the spring and not repeat those mistakes again.
Could the Honourable Lady give way?
I will.
I'm very grateful to Honourable Lady for giving way, and I thank her for bringing this debate today. In my constituency of Surrey Heath, my constituent Matt and his husband adopted their son in 2023, a child who had already endured appalling trauma in the past. And this fund has enabled them to seek the therapy that they have needed from the Cherrycroft practice in a village called Bagshot. Does the Honourable Lady agree with me that despite this one-year reprieve, without long-term sustainable funding and guarantees, that those sustainable therapies will not be available in the long term, but also we risk putting off people from the act of adoption altogether?
Yeah, absolutely. I thank my honourable friend. He makes an excellent point. and it will put people off from adopting or taking children into kinship care. It also risks putting off providers from providing this support. Ministers have insisted that the fund has not been cut, but that's because the overall pot is unchanged. But for children and families, the reality is very different. Individual allowances have been reduced. The per-child therapy limit has been slashed from £5,000 to £3,000, a 40% cut. And the separate £2,500 allowance for assessments has gone. Match funding for complex cases has ended. Families now face impossible choices: therapy or assessment, but not both. One provider put it bluntly like this: it's like asking a garage to fix a car without first checking what the problem is. This is a waste of time and is a waste of money. The consequences are already being felt. Children have had their therapy abruptly stopped while applications were resubmitted. Families have endured month-long gaps without support. Parents describe sharp declines in mental health, rising violence in the home, and children losing trust in professionals. One provider told me of a young child, heartbroken to learn their therapy was ending, who asked, "If I save up my pocket money, can I keep seeing you?" That question should haunt us all. It certainly haunts me. It shows just how fragile trust is for children whose lives have already been shattered by trauma and whose early years have been defined not by making those secure attachments that are so important for getting the right start in life. Relationships are everything. To pull away support is profoundly damaging. The data backs this up. This year's barometer found that 42% of families reach crisis point in 2024. 77% said it feels like a continual struggle to get the help their child needs. 65% experience violent or aggressive behaviour from their child. And I know that there are parents standing behind me who've experienced violence from their children this very week. And in Kinship 2024's survey, more than 1 in 8 kinship carers feared they might not be able to continue caring for their children. Meanwhile, the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy has warned that these 40% cuts per child will have a negative and long-lasting impact. That seems to be putting it mildly. Families, providers, experts and children themselves are all saying the same thing. These cuts are devastating. It's not just the children and the families who will pay the price. The Treasury will too. Placement breakdowns, more children in care, more exclusions, more antisocial behaviour, more long-term damage. All these things cost the state money. The cost of withdrawing support is far higher than the cost of sustaining it. Yet, on top of the cuts, there is the uncertainty, even with the extension today. Providers cannot plan, families are turned away. Experienced therapists have warned me this will replicate the cycle of deprivation and abuse these children have already suffered. What message do we send if we withdraw the one source of essential therapeutic support that children and families rely on?
Would you give way?
I will give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way and for the passion with which she speaks about this subject. I wanted to raise the case of my constituent, Jean, who is an adoptive mother and who has been caring for a son who has FASD, ADHD, autism and developmental trauma. I wanted to raise her case because Jean has sadly died, but before she died, she managed to arrange long-term support for her son. She doesn't know now, but that son will lose that support in a year's time. And so my question, on behalf of Jean and others, is what happens to her son now?
Thank you. My honourable friend makes a really profound contribution about how we treat the most vulnerable in our society. And I don't think I have the answers to that question, but I thank him for raising it today. Adoption England has suggested reform to the fund, perhaps devolving to its regional agencies or local authorities, is a possibility. but no consultation has taken place on this, and pilots have not even begun. Making major structural changes before the evidence in would be reckless, and it risks leaving children and families in deeper crisis. This is why we were particularly glad to hear this morning that the Department will engage with families and providers. And that is why charities like Adoption UK, CVAA UK, Quorum, Kinship, Barnardo's and the Family Rights Group are calling for urgent action. First, a permanent ring-fence fund. Second, a comprehensive review of the April changes. Third, a full public consultation on any future reforms. The engagement promised must be meaningful. And fourth, a 2-year moratorium on further changes, so reforms can be evidence-based, not rushed. We should be supporting vulnerable children, and we should be encouraging adoptive parents to keep doing what they're doing by providing the necessary support for therapy, not least because in 2021 alone, adoptive parents saved the UK economy £4.2 billion. So I end with 4 questions for the Minister. First, what concrete reassurance can the Minister give children, families and providers about the long-term future of the fund? April's announcement came too late and caused avoidable harm, and today's remains short-term. Will the Government commit to doing better this time? Second, can the Minister assure us that the Equalities Impact Assessment was considered as part of the development process for the changes made to the fund announced in April, as per the requirements of the Equalities Act? And can she undertake to share the relevant documents to support this? Third, can the Minister explain how the decision to cut funding available through the ASGSF aligns with the Department's wider efforts to increase the uptake amongst eligible kinship families and how to grow the use of the kinship care arrangements? And fourth, will the Minister acknowledge that cutting this support will cost far more, socially, emotionally and financially to the taxpayer in the years to come? The Adoption and Special Guardianship Support Fund is a vital lifeline for vulnerable children and their adoptive families. It is not a luxury. The Government must change course. Thank you.